I'd like to call to order this public hearing. The Council Bluffs Community School District will hold this public hearing for the plan specifications and form of contract regarding the parking lot renovations at Abraham Lincoln High School and at Hoover Elementary. Let the record show that all board members are in attendance except for Mr. Arthur and Mr. Minshaw. The Council Bluffs Community School District Dr. Murillo will lead us in this discussion. After the presentation, we will have questions from the board, and then after that, the members of the audience can address the board regarding this public hearing. I'll remind you that no action will be taken during this public hearing, but we will dispense with this during the regular board meeting. So Dr. Murillo, would you please lead us in this section?
Certainly, Mr. Kozar, and thank you for this opportunity and time. I'd like to invite Ms. Stacy Pettis to the mic. Her and Jared from HGM are here to kind of walk us through these plans, and excited about the work that we have going on, and I'm excited, and I also want to give a shout out to Stacy and her leadership, and keeping us true to continuing to have those facility and maintenance upgrades. And so tonight we're going to look at AL first or Hoover?
We're going to actually start at Abraham Lincoln.
Okay, great.
We'll do those first two projects, and then we'll move to Hoover. The first public hearing, we're going to talk a lot about concrete and what's in it, and Jared's going to wow you guys with all the details, and then the next two will go a lot faster. So thank you, board, for having us here tonight. We've got three projects that we want to talk about. The first one is bid number, can you guys hear me? Bid number 19-005, Abraham Lincoln Student Lot, phase number 2. And as you guys probably remember from last year, this was a 3-phased project, and we're working on phase 2 this year. Basically, just to kind of give you an aerial photo of Abraham Lincoln High School, up at the upper left-hand corner, we have our baseball, football field, tennis courts. Kind of in the middle is the student parking lot. There's a little green space that's right underneath the blue arrow that we're going to be talking about in the second public hearing. Then we have the staff parking lot that's in the lower right-hand corner. And of course, we have the building there in the right-hand middle. And then we have a service drive towards the back. So I just kind of want to give you that aerial photo so you're familiar with the site. As you guys remember, the actual parking lot's mainly concrete construction. We do have a little bit of overlay, which is kind of right in the bus lane by the front entrance of asphalt. And we finished the phase 1 last summer. Just a little bit of history on the parking lot. The original parking lot was built in the 2008-2009 school year. That was during the major renovation for Abraham Lincoln. And as there was a lot of construction traffic going through this parking lot. We've had some winter weather issues out there, and then there's a lot of bus traffic out there as well as car traffic. We've repaired and patched the lot as best as we can over the last few years, but it's just getting to the point that we need to do some major overhaul at the site. The next photo is actually our first phase we completed last summer. As you can see, there's new concrete in the first photo, and then we have the new trench drain that helps catch a lot of the water runoff that we're taking off the site. With that being said, I'm going to introduce Jared here. He's with HGM, and he's our civil engineer on all three projects.
Hey, good evening. Welcome back to myself, I suppose, for this conversation I feel like I just had about a year ago. Just a quick refresher of what we talked about last year. We had done an investigation to try to figure out what had happened with this. We thought maybe it was a pavement thickness issue. After doing some core samples and soil samples, we determined it probably wasn't. It might have been actually more of a subsurface moisture issue. Just to recap phase 1, the construction actually confirmed that theory. As we pulled back the existing concrete, peeled it back, it was soupy, very soupy underneath. We were able to remedy it We removed top a little bit, put some rock underneath. We got some sub-drain in, and then the trench drain that Stacy just showed. The actual on-site material packed up real tight once we got some dry weather for putting it back in, and we actually got a really nice window for construction in there. Phase 1 went really well. Phase 2 is going to be a continuation of the same. As I said, it was actually the moisture in the concrete itself that was leaching up through the sub-base or subgrade into the slab, not getting its opportunity to get back out of there. And that was combining then with the aggressive salt treatment that needs to happen because of the school site and the large slab of concrete that we have out there, of which we are attacking it. Same with phase 2 as we did phase 1. These cracks here, we had talked about these last year. They show the subsurface water damage that's leaching up through the cracks. This is a picture, as I mentioned last time, there's 2 or 3 days after the last rain and you still have water leaching out of concrete. This is not supposed to happen with concrete, and we're dealing with it here. Phase 2 is the central phase here. It's a fairly large phase. It'll work out well being pinned between the trench drain that we just put in. It'll hopefully catch a lot of that water that is running across there. And we'll be setting ourselves up for the final phase 3, which will be targeted for next year, at which point we'll also deal with the 2 entrances into the parking lot, staging it appropriately to allow access to the site, I know with summer sports, etc. We're going to continue on with doing new gravel underneath to help deal with that water that does get underneath there. There does appear to be some underground movement of water through here due to the proximity to the hills there. Those are capturing it. I've been down there on some dry days and some wet days both. There is water moving through here in phase 1, so that's good. We're catching it. You can't really stop the water from getting in sometimes. They just need to give it an easy way out. So we're going to continue on with this. We're going to put gravel underneath it, sub-drains in the gravel, similar to a French drain around your house, and then we'll put another round of trench drain at the downhill end of phase 2. And then additionally, this is the new thing we've been doing. Well, it's not that new anymore. It's been 3 or 4 years we've been doing it with district concrete. We actually are sealing up the joints with a calcium inhibitor. Since we do heavily treat the sites with salt, salt really is where it starts the failure of the joints. We've had really good luck with this. The stadium was the first place where we really got after it. Having been down there now with several years of winter underneath that, those joints are holding up great. This is being used elsewhere around town where facilities are willing to invest in long-term life of concrete, not just short-term parking lot patches. And we'll continue with that. The schedule is up here. Received the bids here in a few weeks on March 6th. We'll be back here on March 22nd with good bids, hopefully, 26th, I mean. The contractor will mobilize as soon as school is out with work completing hopefully a week or so before school starts back up to allow for a little bit of rain delay if it were to happen at the wrong time at the end of the job there. And then the bid estimate was just shy of $500,000.
Okay, any questions regarding the AL parking lot phase 2 from board
I know
members?
each phase has to be bid out. What's the feedback from the first phase and how well it went and the organization that did the work?
Yep, so Bluffs Paving did the work on phase 1. We had some very good bids. They were all competitive. That's always nice to see. We're bidding this job early enough this year again, which we should be getting right into the window where they're trying to bid out their summer work. I would anticipate Bluffs is going to want to get after it again. Most contractors like the opportunity to do all 3 phases on a site to show off the work, and they also don't like anyone else playing in their sandbox. So I'm hoping they're getting after it. They've already showed interest in it, and we'll have plenty other that are asking for this size of a project, right around $500,000. It's kind of the sweet spot for a lot of firms. So
I think we had talked last time when you were here that the prices of concrete had gone up significantly. Is that still where we're at, or?
they haven't gone up much worse since last year. They've held pretty stable here recently.
Okay, I think that's it for the AL project.
All right, our next project is bid number 19-004. This one is also at Abraham Lincoln High School. And I don't know if you remember from the site plan that I showed you, there was a little green space. I said, remember that? This is where that one is. Okay. Basically, over the spring and summer, we're gonna be doing a little construction project back on the backside of Abraham Lincoln. That's gonna impact our parking that we have on our back service drive area. And right now, we're currently short on parking spots at the site. In fact, in our phase one, we added, about 10 extra spots at that time. And we're still trying to gain some extra spots out there because that parking lot is always packed. And with this project coming up, we want to make sure that we have enough parking at the site moving forward after all of our projects are done. So with that being said, we're looking at doing a small project up front, which I'm going to turn it back over to Jared.
All right, some more concrete. This is basically connecting the two lots. This will eat up a good portion of the remaining unused space here. We're going to be able to add in about 30 spots. This will be car traffic, so that'll help with a little bit with concrete. We're not having to thicken it up too much for buses. And we're going to be able to tie into the existing drive lane that's through there. That drive lane is in pretty good shape, so we're fortunate to have a good slab to tie into with a little bit of sidewalk work where we tie back in. The construction schedule is going to be similar to the main parking lot. I would anticipate that we'll have a contractor that's very interested in doing both and will bid accordingly. Same thing, 2 contractors, 1 sandbox. Generally, this is just a little bit more of a detailed plan. Small lot, really nothing too unique about it, really. The cost estimate's a little under 120. I believe it's getting funded through Pebble, and the schedule is exact same. So,
How many teacher spots are we short?
In the back area, we're losing about 20 spots. So this is kind of a combination of, can be teacher and or visitor spots. Part of the issue that we've had over the last 5 years is we've added more visitor spots out in the student lot, which is taking up student spaces, plus we have visitors and teachers and everybody else who's parking up there because the teacher lot's full. So the hope is that we can kind of recapture some of that in that middle lot.
So will there be designated teacher parking and designated visitor parking, or is it going to be free-for-all?
That full lot that goes down kind of on the lower,
Can you go back to the map so I can see what you're referencing?
technical problems here. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Staff. Mm-hmm. Okay, so my question is, we're short 20 faculty parking. Will there be designated marked faculty parking and visitors? So faculty have the opportunity to park. We can designate it.
And I think that's important for our faculty to have parking space.
We just want to make sure that we have enough visitor spots in there as well.
But a faculty, I think, should take priority over visitors.
Other questions? Okay, we'll move forward then with the Hoover parking renovations.
All right, moving on to bid number 19-003. This is the Hoover West Parking Lot project. I don't know if you guys remember last year, we were having some issues with the parent drop-off over at Hoover, And basically what we did last summer is we repainted the south lot to give an actual parent drop-off. So the students were being let off right next to the sidewalk and not walking through the parking lot. And with that being said, we needed to take a look at figuring out another way to recapture some of those parking lot spaces that we were losing in the south lot. So with that being said, we're actually looking at the current visitor parking lot area that goes from kind of the middle of Hoover all the way up to the north lot. And this is an overlay of what we're proposing. I'll invite Jared back up here. Fine.
All right, so this is basically extending the current lot that's through there. This is about the only way we could increase the number of parking spots out there. To do this, we're gonna have to extend the retaining wall, if you can envision that. The main staircase that goes up to the main entrance, we're basically gonna, instead of cut off that curve, we're just gonna keep extending it to the north along that existing sidewalk and staircase up there. We'll blend it in, same type of block and everything. It should look seamless when we're done with it. And then we'll extend the sidewalk over to the parking lot to the north there and maximize the number of new parking stalls in there. This is gonna change a little bit of the traffic flow through here since this is no longer the designated drop-off spot. We don't need to have a direct exit onto North Broadway, so we're actually gonna combine it into the existing parking lot that's on the north side there and utilize a common exit there. Anybody who's driven up through North Broadway during student time, it's not an easy task getting out of any of them driveways. So at least we're gonna be minimizing the amount of people that are simultaneously trying to pull onto North Broadway. We will have to tie into and modify a few of the storm sewer inlets, et cetera, that are already in place. We should be able to fit it all in there. And then, if this gets approved tonight, we'll be getting with the city, to coordinate that sidewalk, which is technically a public sidewalk, since the parking and the sidewalk are swapped on the right of way. It's the current agreement, we'll just be modifying it as well.
So explain to me the flow of traffic, because when I drive down North Broadway to get to the hospital, I have several cars trying to pull out to go southbound on North Broadway, and it is quite a jam.
Yes.
So if they pull in that entrance there, they have to go north through the north parking lot where the staff is parking and come out.
Yeah, their exit will be about 150 feet further north than where they currently were doing it.
Mm-hmm. A parking lot back
That
there
bus
too.
line, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they're trying to get out of the Super Saver parking lot too. It's a mess.
Yes, it is. I lived on North Broadway for about a decade.
23 years I've been there. Why do we think this is better? Because there's more parking stalls? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This doesn't do a whole lot to improve the traffic flow. It really
Right.
doesn't. What
It
it's
just
really
gives more
doing,
parking.
it's replacing the parking we lost with the changes we made to the parent drop-off last fall.
Would it improve traffic safety a little if you've got less
Or-
potential for
Yes,
3 vehicles exiting
it should.
at the same time?
It's-
Well,
it-
to
it
be
should.
honest, I mean, where they were exiting from, the gentleman that stands there every day and pushes the button, I can't remember his name, Junior, he had the ability to control traffic coming out because he would push the light. But if they're gonna be further north, I don't know if he's gonna be able to.
I believe the intent is this is not really intended to be a drop-off area for
It
parents
never
dropping
was.
off and taking
It
out.
just is how it happened.
But I think the intent is to try to force the parent usage on the south side there,
Mm-hmm.
so it's at least in one spot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The retaining wall that's being extended, when was the retaining wall put in?
I don't recall the year it was put in with that main entrance up front, had to be around 10, yeah. It was
And
an
it's
event,
still in good shape?
yeah. Pretty good shape, yeah.
We just redid the stairs, is that right?
It went in with those stairs, yeah. And we're not really removing much wall square footage wise. We're gonna grab into the existing. The main wall is to the south of that. The majority of the wall is south of that main stairway. So,
And how is the faculty parking there? Is that adequate? Are we short?
I'm happy to come back to that slide. But the estimate right now is a little over 150,000, being paid for from Pebble. And the schedule, same as the,
Can you go back? I think that said ALHS.
copy paste.
Okay. That is Hoover.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
for Hoover, yes. And then the schedule, same, we're gonna build it over the winter time. The contractor, that was.
Summer.
Summertime, sorry. The snow was in my mind. So, contractor who did the work, last year on those stairs, was already looking at the wall, talking about tying it in, et cetera. So I would anticipate we'll have plenty of interest in this size of the project.
Okay, any further questions? Hearing none, if there's anybody in the audience that wishes to address the proposed projects, now is the time to come forward and make your statements. If not, we are closing this public hearing, and we will move right into our regular board meeting of the Council Bluffs Community School District Board of Directors. Mr. Wilson, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Grove?
Present.
Dr. Ogres?
Present.
Mr. McGlade?
Present.
Mr. LaFurla?
Present.
Mr. Kazire?
Present. As you are able, would you please rise with me to observe a moment of silence followed by our Pledge of Allegiance? Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We now have the approval of our agenda. Is there a motion?
I would move approval of the agenda as presented.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving our agenda as presented signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. And our agenda has been approved. Next up is our approval of the minutes from our regular board meeting of January 22nd. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval of the minutes from the regular business meeting of January 22nd, 2019.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. And our minutes have been approved. Now is the time for public participation. Those individuals who wish to address the board concerning items on the agenda or anything that is of concern to them, now is the time to address the board. And if you do, please state your name and your residence.
Hey, I'm Gina Durfee. I am the president-elect of CBEA. Excuse me, getting over a cold. Thanks for having me here tonight, allowing me to talk. I just wanted to encourage the board, as CBEA opens negotiations, to direct their negotiators to keep permissibles in the contract. Just a really simple request, and I know you guys have done a nice job honoring what we have asked for. So thanks for your time.
Thank
Oh,
you.
I forgot my address, but I wrote it
Oh,
on the
that's,
paper.
that's okay. Anyone else? Seeing no one else, we will move forward with our superintendent's report. Dr. Murillo.
Thank you, Mr. Kozar. At this time, we're going to present our student achievement. Dr. Vorthman will be joining me here in a minute at the podium. And tonight, our presentation will be on the implementation of bridges in elementary mathematics. I'm pretty excited because we have some pretty great guests that are joining us this evening, and it's always wonderful to have teachers, instructional coaches, and our curriculum specialists all together on the same night presenting to the board. So thank you again for being here. Dr. Vorthman, the floor is yours.
Thank you. All right, well, it's my pleasure tonight to provide you with some information about the implementation of bridges in elementary mathematics. And I will be joined tonight, come on up, ladies, by the stars of the show tonight, which are the people who are doing the work on a daily basis. Joining me tonight is Mrs. Deb Fetch. She is the teacher leader for elementary mathematics, and she serves as the curriculum specialist in that role, supporting mathematics coaches and mathematics teachers at the elementary level. Also joining us tonight is Mrs. Sarah Buckholt. She is an elementary mathematics coach at Edison Elementary. And joining us is Mrs. Jamie Bradley. She is a 5th grade teacher at Edison Elementary. And so they will be assisting with the presentation tonight. I wanted to set the stage a little bit tonight before we dig into the implementation and kind of revisit a little bit of context for why we are talking about elementary math tonight. And as you recall, at the beginning of the year, the superintendent set forth a vision that all students would graduate from our high schools with a diploma and an additional credential. And one of the things that has been really exciting about that has been the development and creation of career pathways for students, opportunities at Early College Academy at our high schools, the TradeWorks Academy, which is going to really rejuvenate industrial technology at the freshman and sophomore year, the development of a pre-apprenticeship program, opportunities for students to do greater career exploration at the middle school, the international baccalaureate programs in middle schools. But we also need to remember that none of those things are possible without the firm foundation that happens in our elementary programs. And that our elementary staff and elementary principals play a pivotal part in making sure that we are able to achieve that vision that all students graduate with a credential and a high school diploma. And so at our elementary, we are really laying the foundation for students to be able to enter those pathways, both in terms of adolescent development, social and emotional well-being, as well as in numeracy and literacy. And so we're going to present tonight specifically on what we are doing to help improve numeracy in our elementary schools so that students are prepared to achieve that vision of a high school diploma and a second credential. So I want to provide a little bit of background information about how we got to this point. As you recall, about 3 years ago, we underwent a study where teams of teachers identified that we had some gaps in the resources that we were using to teach literacy at the elementary level. And what grew out of that was the adoption of the Wonders program in grades K through 6, and also for English language learners in grades K through 6. As we looked at data and received feedback from teachers, we identified that we had some holes in our mathematics program as well. We had developed a very rich homegrown program of resources that we thought most closely aligned to the Iowa core at the time, and also reflected our philosophy of ensuring that students had a conceptual understanding of mathematics. And when we first started down this road with curriculum adoption in elementary math, there weren't a lot of resources that were available that were aligned to the Iowa core. And so we kind of had to create our own. Well, times have changed over the past 8 years, and we now were able to find a resource that met our philosophy, that aligned with our philosophy, but also provided a comprehensive resource for all of our classrooms. And so last year, we identified that from multiple vendors. We identified that Bridges in mathematics was the closest
to what we believed was the most appropriate resource to put in the hands of our teachers so that our students would have a comprehensive mathematics program. Bridges in Mathematics also well aligns with the illustrative math and open up resources that have been identified at middle school and high school. So we're starting to see a more fully aligned K-12 continuum of resources and instruction for students in mathematics K-12. Our goal is to provide teachers with high quality resources so they weren't spending time and energy creating what could be put in front of them and that they could use to supplement. And so our goal there was to make sure that if we were able to provide the high quality resources, that we would be able to see greater fidelity, that teachers would be able to use them with greater frequency, that we would see deepening of the actual use in the classrooms, and ultimately, as you've heard me say many, many times from this podium, it would result in less variance, so that we would have a more predictable and guaranteed experience for students regardless of the classroom that they're in. Not that we wouldn't see different teaching styles in those classrooms, but the performance of students, the opportunity for them to learn would be the same, regardless if they were in classroom A or building B. So these resources, both Wonders and Bridges, are aligned with the core standards. They are based on they include research-based instructional materials, and they have a spiraled approach to learning, which means that we're not expecting students to learn and master a skill the first time it's taught. These skills and these standards reoccur all the way through the curriculum, so that students have multiple opportunities to be introduced, to practice, and deepen their understanding before they're expected to perform on an assessment. They also include complementary intervention materials that are aligned to help some of our struggling learners and challenge some of our more advanced learners at the same time. And they also align with the screeners that we have in literacy and math, so that when we identify students who need additional support on the FAST test, we have materials that help support their implementation of the material. So that's enough of me setting some background. Now let's hear about what really happens in our classrooms. So Mrs. Fetch is going to come give a little bit of overview based on the information that was in your packets about what the Bridges Mathematics program looks like in our classrooms.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Can you hear me okay? Thanks. So we are so excited to have the new curriculum that we have. Like Corey had mentioned in the past, we were piecemealing different resources together. Nothing that truly represented the rigor and the expectations of the Common Core. So it was a year ago that we took a look at Bridges intervention, and it was due to those gaps that Corey was talking about. Sometimes we call it unfinished learning. When you have a mastery program, a lot of times you spend a large chunk of time on a concept or a topic, and then you don't revisit it. So if the students haven't reached mastery of it, they lose that opportunity then to revisit it. So once we started looking for some ways to fill the gaps, which was Bridges intervention, we decided that we wanted to take a look at the other proponents of the Bridges curriculum. And so we actually have all three of these programs that we are implementing this year in an early implementation format. Bridges in math and number corners, go to the next slide, are the daily components that the teachers use. Bridges is a program that is heavy in student discussion and heavy in problem solving in ways that are meaningful and relevant to kids. So students every day their first part of their day is in problems and investigations. And that usually involves a student or a teacher igniting a rich problem for students to solve. And they spend time first individually working on the problem, and then they pair and share with partners or in small groups. And then they come back to whole group and they share their strategies, they defend their solutions, and they talk about the different strategies and the ones that are most leaning towards efficiency. Workplaces is another part of the day, which is really stations that students revisit. They are introduced in a way where the whole class does the activity or they play the game, and then students have a month or two to revisit those same stations. The beauty of that is really in regards to freeing up the teacher so she's able to assess kids, to give feedback. She has the ability, or he has the ability, to pull small groups and to differentiate. One reason we really loved Bridges was that differentiation is built into every lesson. And it's not just for those struggling students, which a lot of resources provide, but it's also for those students that need a challenge. So it is laid out in a way where if students are struggling, we can still not lose that rigor, but we might differentiate by different models that we're using with students. We might need that small group interaction where we're connecting different strategies, or we're connecting the concrete representations to the visual representations to the abstract. The models are amazing, and I know that Sarah and Jamie will be sharing some of the success stories that we've had for them. Number Corner is a separate time during the day, partly because it's connected to the calendar and other displays in the classroom. And this is a time where really it allows students to have some of that distributive practice that they would need on basic facts or connecting fractions to real life scenarios. It is a time of day where the students really look forward to being able to share and to find those patterns and relationships and to talk about different properties and how they could solve problems or equations in different ways. The other thing that we were really looking for in a resource was to have a good family connection. So often we hear parents ask, how can we help our child at home? They want to help, but with grandchildren that are in high school, I tell you, I would want some family support to help out with my grandkids as well. So we were really looking for a way that they could feel connected to what was happening in the classroom, but also to be able to extend that at home. So the family components, the students have a booklet that's called The Home Connection. And at the beginning of every unit, there's a page that goes home to the families that will explain what the students will be learning in that unit. And a unit is about a month's time. And then weekly, there are home connections that go home that will show how students are learning in the classroom, the models that they're using, and ways that they can continue to help their child at home. Another resource that we really loved with the Bridges is that there is a free family app. The app has games, some of the games that have been played in the classroom, but it also has access to the models that we are using in the classroom with students as well. So it's free. It doesn't require a username. It's very easy for the students to even access at home because they're accessing the same apps at school. Now the real stars are coming. I am very, very fortunate to work with 9 amazing instructional math coaches. They make my life so enjoyable. They sneak me into classrooms so I get to still be with cherubs, which is something that I can't tell you, it's priceless. But this year, the coaches have a different calling. In the past, our coaching cycles have been more focused on what teachers felt they wanted support with. It could have been a standard, or it could have been maybe classroom questioning. It could have been engagements to make learning more relevant to kids. But this year, with the early implementation and with having a resource that spirals, we knew we needed to change our coaching cycles or our coaching philosophy to be one where the coach and the teacher were truly team teaching side by side. So they co-plan every week, and they are in the classroom, and our goal is that if a visitor would come in, they would not be able to distinguish or to tell who the teacher was and who the coach was, that they're that in sync and learning side by side and instructing side by side. So with that in mind, Sarah Buckelt is our amazing math coach from Edison, and she has been working in a 5th grade team, and Jamie Bradley has been fortunate enough to be able to work with her, and Sarah would say she's been fortunate enough to get to work with Jamie as well.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm the math coach, Sarah Buckholt, and I've had the pleasure to work in Jamie Bradley's 5th grade classroom for the last 2 months, kind of rubbing elbows, getting in the mud, really learning what it's like to implement a new curriculum. And there's a lot of pieces to learn, but man, have we been so happy with what we've done so far. We found that it's not only really great for students, but for teachers too, with those pieces that Deb Fetch had just talked about, with the challenge pieces, the differentiation pieces. There's just lots of great things in there, and there's a lot of good questions that Jamie and I use to kind of plan our lessons weekly. We really figure out what questions we're going to ask students so we get the most bang for our buck. We really want to see how we can get students' achievement to raise and how we can do that through our questioning. So we're going to share some of those highlights for you, okay?
Good evening.
Good evening.
There's two things that I want to share with you guys tonight. And the first thing that I wanted to share was how having a coach has helped me implement this new curriculum. So one thing that Sarah and I have noticed as we've been planning our lessons is how each lesson has something for every type of learner I have in my classroom. There's the main lesson where I teach to people who are at grade level. It's for everybody, and everybody gets the grade level curriculum. But we also have that beautiful intervention piece for students who may be struggling. And then, as a teacher, we have the challenge. Woohoo. The challenge is something I have not had in years past. That challenge is something to work with kids or to challenge kids to move beyond what a typical fifth grader would do. So having those pieces and working together with Sarah to let the kids' experiences has been amazing. The second thing, and I think the most important thing that I'd like to share, is the success that my students have had. So when we were working on fractions, it's scary. In fifth grade, the problems get complex, the students get nervous, they're afraid, and it can cause students to shut down. Not this year. We have models that relate to things that we know about in everyday life that they see every day. We introduced the money model and the time model. Money, clocks. So these two models have really helped our students take risks to be successful on those very difficult and challenging fraction problems. And one of the really nice thing about that is that Mrs. Buckholt gets to be in multiple classrooms. And when she's in the fourth grade room and the third grade room, she sees these models being used over and over. Now, of course, the problems are less challenging, but I'm really excited for years to come because when the fourth grade students come to me next year, I'm going to be seeing them using the same models on the problems that are challenging them at a fifth grade level. So that's super exciting, and I'm so proud of them, and I see their confidence growing every day. I have math in the morning, and it's funny because the students will come up to me, oh, wow, Mrs. Bradley, the morning went so fast, and I always tell them, well, time flies when you're having fun. They're super engaged. They love the manipulatives. They love all the things that we're challenging them to do, and they are definitely rising to the occasion. So thank you.
So as Jamie mentioned, I'm not only in fifth grade, but I also spend time in third and fourth grade. And it's been really neat to see a concept such as multiplication and division, how that foundation is being built in third grade, and then it's developed into harder problems in fourth grade, and then into fifth grade when we're even multiplying some fractions and dividing fractions. And the one thing that I noticed is that the tools are manipulatives, the models and the language stays the same. It's constant. So I teach at Edison, which has a high mobility rate, and I know that if my kids or my students move to another building in this district, they're going to have something that's going to comfort them. They're going to have that same language, the same models, the same manipulatives. And it's just a really nice thing to know that I know what I'm saying at Edison is being said at Bloomer, is being said at Rue, that we're all cohesive. And I think that's been a piece that's been missing in the past. And so I think that's really only going to help drive achievement. So any questions?
Looks like you're ready to burst, Jill. You just look so excited. No, I'm not picking. It's not at all.
I'm just curious to know how the ease of use of the materials as we are rolling this out
That's a
for
great
full
question.
implementation.
There is
I'm
a
assuming
lot.
not every teacher is going to have a coach in the classroom with them.
Probably true. There is a lot of reading that goes into it, but I tell you, I think it's super important if we want to raise the level of achievement. Reading those lessons, you won't have to read them year after year. They're there as a guide. It's not scripted. It's just there as a guide. Yes, you do have to read and understand what we're teaching, but they are concepts we have taught before. So I think it's doable as a teacher in the classroom.
Yeah,
Would you agree?
I think it's one of those things that you fully commit. If you want your kids to do well, you're going to do the hard work, and sometimes that might mean a little extra reading at night. But when you see it paying off in the classroom and there's less frustration for you, then there's less frustration for the students. And so as we've kind of read into Bridges, they've always said the first year of implementation is going to be tough, and then as the years go on, it kind of lightens the load because it's the same routines that you've taught in the past, and so it does get a little bit easier. But there is some work involved in it for sure.
But it's important work. As a parent in the district, it makes me very excited as well. So
Yeah.
I think it's worth it.
Have you worked with, do you know of parents that are using those, those resources?
Well, since I teach fifth grade, it'd be interesting to know what the little guys are doing.
I know a lot of the teachers have shared some of the apps onto the Google Classroom that kids can log into at night. And so there are, I think in third grade when they're really practicing those multiplication and division facts, those kids seem to talk about it more. And I don't know, as the kids get into fifth grade, they don't really like to talk about
They just
school
do
stuff.
it.
But
They
I think
love the technology.
as-
They just can't
Yeah.
use it.
as we get more into this implementation, that parent piece will try to kind of get more out to the parents. Right now, we're really trying to figure out the different pieces, but that component, it's already done for us. It's not something that we have to create, so it's going to be much easier to do that.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Borthman and team. You did a wonderful job. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite Dr. Shudak to the podium. Dr. Shudak is going to give us kind of a 20,000-foot view of our new state assessment that is coming, and I think you'll be really interested in his presentation. I know I was, and thinking through what this will all look like. So, Dr. Shudak, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Murillo. Good evening, ladies
Good
and
evening.
gentlemen of the board. And thank you for the opportunity to allow me a few minutes to provide you an overview of our new state assessment. It's called the Iowa Statewide Assessment of Student Progress, or ISASP, as it's commonly becoming known. And we'll be delivering it or administering it to our students in grades 3 through 11 later this spring in the month of May. You may be asking, why do we need a new state assessment? What's wrong with the old state assessment? Well, back in December of 2015, the 15-16 school year, President Obama and his administration reauthorized the Elementary, Secondary, and Education Act, which wasn't reauthorized previously, but for the Bush administration enacting No Child Left Behind. So we were under No Child Left Behind authorization of that act for a number of years, and that's when we were using the Iowa assessment system, or what we commonly were calling the Iowa assessments, for I think about 10 years during that time. It had taken the states about 3 years to figure out what the new reauthorization meant, getting the guidelines, and then developing plans on how the states were going to comply with those guidelines. So again, we will be administering it for grades 3 through 11, and one of the reasons why the old test doesn't comply with the new authorization of this act is that it didn't have the language arts and writing assessment tied to it. So this new test will also include, besides reading and math, a language and writing assessment, and as well as a science assessment, but that science test or science assessment will only be given to students in grades 5, 8, and 10. It has to be one grade level at elementary, middle, and high school. Some of the features of the new test will include the fact that it's an online version. Most of our students will be taking an online version of the test, and there is a printed version of the test, and we'll reserve that for students who, because of certain needs, placements, whatnot, will be allowed to take the pencil paper version. The biggest change, I think the biggest difference, will come in the types of the items the students will be served. And in the old test, they had one type of item. It was a multiple choice item. Every single question had 4 possible choices, and they got to pick or guess at one. The new test, much like our NWEA MAP test, will have a number of different item types. There's a constructed response item type, in which the students will have to actually construct a response to a question or a problem. That could be graphing an equation, graphing a set of points on a Cartesian plane, a number of different types of construction that they have to do to show their thinking. The selected response items will also include some multiple choice items, but it'll also include some selected response items that might be select all of the figures that are quadrilaterals, multiple choice, where there's more than one choice to be made. Short answers, which could be filling in a blank, providing a phrase to respond to the question, and then the new one, the extended response or the classic essay question. There, like the map test, will also be a number of technology-enhanced items. I mentioned the drag and drop. You can take all of the figures that are quadrilaterals and put them in the quadrilateral bucket, and all the triangles and drag and drop them over into the triangle bucket. For sorting, classifying, comparing. There's also measuring tools that the students will see, and they are seeing on the map. These could include digital rulers, protractors, compasses. There's embedded calculators to be used for those problems that might require a calculator use, and then there's graphing tools that are used as well. The administration of the ISASP is also different in that the biggest change in the administration will be the test will not be timed. Much like the NWEA map test, the test is not timed. We're told that it takes about an hour to complete each of the tests. Some students will take less time than that. Some students will take more time. About 2 hours for the English Language Arts extended writing test they said should be allowed. And they don't have to be completed in one setting, which means the students can start maybe in the morning, take a break, the test can be paused, come back in the afternoon, and finish. But we're told that on the online version, if a test is started on a particular day, it has to be finished during that day. For those students who, for whatever reason that's not possible, that they might need to complete a test over 1 or 2 days, 2 or 3 days, then we'll probably need to order a pencil paper version for them. Some of the structures of the ISASP, again, I've been comparing it with the NWEA map test. Unlike the map test, it will be a fixed form. The map test is a variable form, computer adapted, so what kind of test item you're given is going to depend on how you answered the previous one. And what the map does, it tries to figure out exactly what level of achievement you're at by trying to get you to answer half of them correct and half of them incorrect to find what your ceiling is. On the ISASP, at least for the first 2 years, it'll be a fixed form, and every student will answer the same number of items in the exact same order, which is, I think, a bit of a drawback, especially if we're trying to figure out what exactly is the achievement level of a student. Our highest achieving students and our lowest achieving students will be given the same items. There will be a lot better support for our Spanish-speaking students on the math and science tests. They could elect to have those science items read to them in Spanish if that is a need of theirs. Another positive point of this assessment compared to the old assessment is that these items are developed directly from the Iowa Core Standards. There's a lot of assessments out there that have already existed, so when the Common Core came into practice, we were trying to find out which of the items on the current assessment align to which standards on the Common Core, or in this case, the Iowa Core. But this test, the items were directly developed from those Iowa Core standards. The unfortunate part is that there's been no standard setting done yet because the test has not been administered anywhere. This will be the first time for the administration. Standard setting are things that tell us what the scores mean. You know, what score is going to be proficient, which score is going to put a student at the 80th percentile or at the 20th percentile. And those will be done throughout the summer after all the results are done. And so we won't get those results back until probably August or September. We're told that the results will be something that we can actually do something with. They'll be actionable. We should be able to see what a student's strengths and needs are, as well as what the strengths and needs are of our programs, curriculum, instructional strategies, and whatnot. The cost of the test will be a total of $6.40 per student, and you see the breakdown there by test and subtest. In comparison, the Iowa assessments were $2.50 per student, so it's about 2.5 times more expensive. The district will be responsible for that, and this $6.40 for an online test is really a lot cheaper than what we would have seen with the Smarter Balance test that was proposed several years ago. For pencil paper test, it'll be $1 more per student. So our next steps include technology readiness. This week, our technology department will be working with Pearson, who will be the vendor for the test, which is actually developed by Iowa Testing. And I'm very confident in this area because we've been doing online tests for a number of years now, and we're used to that. We have a strong infrastructure, connectivity, one-to-one machines for students. The area I'm a little more concerned and anxious about is the training for proctors and teachers. This year, it's a requirement that all proctors must be certified licensed staff. In the past, we had maybe used paras with some training to do some one-on-one testing, and this year they have to have a teaching or administrative certificate to be a proctor. We will be, I see it as kind of a three-pronged approach to the training. The first prong would be that anything that the state requires us to do, whether it's view a webinar, or attend a webinar, or view a video, submit some kind of response or sign off on something that says that we actually did see that. And I think that would give us an overview of what the system is about and how it works. But then the second prong would be actually getting out into the buildings and helping the teachers to set up their test sessions, to bring in their rosters, to get everything done that needs to be done in order to get ready to administer it. And then the third would be actual assistance while they're administering it. The day that they sit down with the students and say, you know, open up your Chromebooks, type this in, get ready to take a test, we have to have assistance there for them as well. Then the last thing that we need to do is to help them develop their, like I said, their test sessions and rosters, but also test tickets. On the map, there's nothing that needs to be printed for the teachers, but on this one, teachers or somebody's going to need to print test tickets that are going to have a username and a password to give to the students, and that's what they'll have to log in with. On the NWEA map, they simply enter a code, and then they look for their name on a list of students on that roster, select their name, and then open it up that way. So with the map, there's nothing that needs to be printed, but with this, we do need to deal with test tickets, and we've not done that in the past. And finally, I'd like to direct your attention to this website here. We're starting to share this with our buildings, with teachers, principals, and students. And at this website here is a little more background, but more importantly, there's some practice tests there. So if you care to take a practice test in either reading, language arts, math, or science, feel free to log in, and it'll give you some feedback there. The tests are about half as long as the actual tests are, 14, 15, 16 items, and it'll tell you you've got however many right out of that. So I do like that part of it because we don't get that kind of feedback on the practice test with the MAP test. So with that, I'd invite any follow-up questions or clarifications.
Questions? No.
Has any school system done a practice run-through of all this?
The window for this testing opens March 1st, and it's a really large window. It's March 1st through May 31st. So to my knowledge, except for the field testing that we've done, the tryout items that we were required to do to get a break in the cost of the Iowa assessments, I don't know that the test has been administered to anybody at this point.
So you've done some of that here?
Yeah,
We
of the last few years, we were one of the districts that volunteered to try out some of those items while we were taking the Iowa assessments. So our students have seen some of those items. But as far as the test as it comes together, except for the practice test that they have online, there's not been any districts that's taken it yet. It hasn't opened up.
So I hope it works well.
Yes. Yeah, and that goes back to the training bill. With the MAP test a year ago, probably, I think this month, a year ago, we started to implement the NWEA MAP. And what we did as part of that training, we had a few volunteers from each building who did the implementation, who implemented the winter test for the MAP, just to see what it was like. And then we brought them back together, and we talked about what was needed to help the rest of the teachers in the spring. April, I think, was when we did that, April, May. And, you know, what was going to be needed to help the rest of the teachers do it. So we had that handful of teacher leaders, early implementers, look at it, and I'd really like to be able to do that again, because that kind of a training model, where you had a couple people from the building try it out, figure out what it was like, what are the drawbacks, what are the struggles, and then help the rest of the folks at the building get set up for the real test in the spring. That seemed to work well. I don't know if we're able to do that with this.
Other question I have, you talked about the standardization of the results hasn't been done yet. Why can't we just say you got X% correct? Why do we have to do this comparison stuff?
Yeah.
I know that gives jobs to guys like you, but
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Who would, yeah.
as a parent, I think
Yeah, I think.
you had 50 items on the test, my kid got 80% of them. That tells me something. Whereas I have 40th percentile,
Yeah.
well, that tells me my kid's dumb. That's stupid.
Well,
I'm
and I
sorry.
think with the percent as the score and the target, it comes down to what percent is going to be good. If it's 80%, that's mastery learning, that's typical good score. But what if we find that 80% of the students get 80 or higher? You know, that means something different than if 10% of the students got 80 or higher. And I think as much as we might not want to admit it, you know, the ranking is important in terms of comparing the subgroups too. They need to be able to have some kind of a target by which we say, are the subgroups getting closer to the non-subgroup? And that's a big part of the Elementary Secondary Education Act, or the War on Poverty.
Okay. I could be here all night arguing with you about all that.
Yeah, it's trying to not make any score, you know, random or arbitrary, I guess, is what that's about. Any others?
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Shizak. And at this time, I'd like to invite for our last presentation of the evening, Mr. Milborn, to the podium. He is going to share with you his 90-day plan. That was a quick transition for you, wasn't it, Mr. Milborn?
Well, good evening. Thank you.
Good evening.
I'm excited to share our Human Resources 90-day plan and then talk about how those important first 90 days will really feed into the department's strategic plan going forward for the next 2 to 4 years. So the outcomes for tonight, we're in about day 43 right now, so some of this will be a little repeated. But for the outcomes tonight, I want to talk about how our HR team has defined our mission and articulate our operating values. We've conducted a strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threat assessment to help us guide our work moving forward. And now we are in the process of determining some key goals and metrics. And after we determine those key goals and metrics, that will help us designate our strategies and then ultimately create a strategic plan moving forward. So as we begin, I'd first like to start with this amazing team up here. These are the 7 members that make up the HR team. I am very grateful for their knowledge, their work, and their efforts, and we are very lucky as a district to have such a wonderful team in this department. It is a mixture of some new employees and a mixture of some veteran employees. So Jillian and Tammy and Amanda have been in the department for a while, and they have lots of institutional memory and lots of knowledge about HR and its processes.
processes, excuse me. And then Kelly is our new benefits specialist. She comes to us from Iowa Western with lots of experience in that area. And then Ashley is our new administrative assistant. She came from Crescent, and she is picking things up very quickly and is very responsive to our customers' needs. And then we have Emily Warren, who's our director of compliance, who comes to us with her law background and really has a lot of expertise in many areas. So very grateful for their work and having such a team surround me during these first 90 days. Being new to the team, it was important that we defined our mission. So I really challenged the team, and we really challenged each other. Why do we exist? Why does the HR department exist for Council Bluffs schools? And we brainstormed on sticky notes, and we have lots of ideas. We put them up on the board. We kept whittling them down and getting them down, and we ended up with 3 key words. We are here to select, support, and develop. So we are here to select one more employee like our best employee. We know that if we select one more like our best, it will continue to make our organization great. We are here to support every single employee, whether that's a question about benefits or leave or their paycheck. We know when we support our employees, they don't have to worry about those things that then can take their focus away from the really important work that they do each day out in our schools, at our facilities. And we want to develop all of our employees. Okay, we provide wonderful development opportunities for our teachers, and that is a selling point for Council Bluffs. We also want to develop our paraeducators. We want to train our custodians well, our nutrition, increase that retention rate by really developing them as employees and members of our school community. So select, support, develop, that is our mission moving forward. Then we wanted to articulate our values. So how are we going to operate as a team together? But more importantly, how are we going to operate with our customers, the employees of Council Bluffs schools? And we landed on 4 key ideas here. We want to always operate in a trustworthy manner. Okay? So we want to be reliable, trustworthy, confidential, those items. We also want to operate in a timely manner. When you have a question about benefits or leave or your pay, someone has to get back to you in a timely manner, or that just keeps building that anxiety and that stress up for you. So we're going to operate in a timely manner. We want to operate in a transparent manner. Okay? So many tough decisions come out of our department, many complicated decisions come out of our department, but we can always be transparent on the policies or the procedures or the processes we use to make those decisions. And then lastly, we want to treat every employee with respect and go after that relentlessly, as we are always treating everyone with respect no matter the situation. And in this first 30 days is really important to relay that to all of our Council Bluffs employees, and it was really important to practice and continue to build that within our team. So the last thing we did within that 30-day time frame is we conducted a SWOT assessment, so strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And this was done through formal measures, such as surveys that were sent out in the fall, and also through informal conversations with teachers, department heads, principals, and things of that nature. So, some strengths that came up. We are fully staffed. We're finally fully staffed, and we have a good mixture of team members on that team. And then also some feedback we got was compliance. We've done a nice job of letting people know their licenses are going to expire, things of that nature. So we got some nice feedback on that. Weaknesses. In the past in this department, we've had a lot of good processes, a lot of hard work and quality work has come out of the Human Resources Department in the past. But we found that we need to capture all those processes and get them in a document, so if someone leaves in the future, we can kind of pick up and build on those wonderful things that have happened in the past. And then in the survey, there was some talk about a lack of trust, okay? And that trust came through in words of timeliness, lack of communication, a lack of reliability.
So we understood as we created those values and we defined our mission, that is something we really needed to address moving forward. Opportunities. We have an updated financial system that we crossed over to in January, and within that system, there are some components for the HR that we can implement that we believe are going to make us more efficient and allow us to eliminate some waste. And then also an opportunity, there's a fresh perspective with new leadership. So new eyes, I get, for a couple more days, I get to ask, why do we do things that way? I get to scrutinize everything, which really makes us analyze everything and see if we're doing it the most impactful and efficient way. However, a threat is a new perspective and new leadership. Being new in the role, you know, and having some newer team members on the team, there's possibly things we can miss as we're learning at ebb and flow of the school year. And so we just have to be really conscious of that and try to be proactive. And if we do make a mistake, try to be reactive and transparent about how we're going to fix it. And then also there's some economic challenges, you know, always facing school districts as we move forward. So now we are in the heart of that 60-day range, and we are trying to figure out how, what kind of goals should we start looking at that's going to allow us to plan moving forward. And so these are some ideas that we are brainstorming as a team, and at the end of the 60 days, we will have some firm goals set. And goals are really important because those are those flag posts or those mile markers in the future that we can then create strategies around to meet those goals. So we'll be setting goals in these 4 areas: around performance excellence, strategic staffing, management and development, and culture and rewards. So once again, these are just draft goals that we're still working with the HR team and working with all stakeholders of Council Bluffs. So, but some things that might be in place, just to give you a few examples: the number of documented processes, response time, so how are we responding to our customers, customer efforts, how hard is it to find information or get a question answered, the percent of digital files moving forward, which will probably be in the plan of moving to a more digitized filing system. And then how many job descriptions are we updating each year? So just some examples there. For strategic staffing, what's the number of days from when a job is posted until we hire it? We want to streamline that and make that process more efficient. The sub to staff ratio, it's a very big topic. As a building principal, I felt it. As a teacher, I felt it. And it's something we've already started working on. We want to get that sub to staff ratio from 1 sub to every 4 teachers. A 90% fill rate of subs, an 80% post-hire rate, which means after we hire a teacher, we follow up with the principal at 6 months, 12 months, and 18 months. And we ask, do you feel this teacher is still meeting the standard that we hired them on? And that helps us calibrate our hiring practices. Partnerships with higher education to source jobs and to source subs. And then internal and external fills of leaders to create kind of that pipeline or that succession planning component. Other possible metrics under managing and development would be retention rate. So we do look at retention rates quite a bit for teachers right now, which has been a great past practice of the HR team. We also want to look at retention rates for all employees. So are we retaining our paras, retaining our nutrition staff, our custodian staff, et cetera? How many retention interviews are we doing each year? So you're staying with Council Bluffs schools. Why? Take that information and use it when we're out recruiting, when we're out trying to source jobs with higher education institutions, and then exit interviews. If people do leave, find out why. Is there something we can fix and improve? Other things would be percent of evaluations completed, the number of feedback hours that principals are getting, the amount of teachers are getting, the amount of pairs are getting, and then the hours of training and professional learning for para-educators and classified staff. As I mentioned before, training all the people in our buildings and providing professional learning for all the people in our buildings is very important. And then under the culture, climate and engagement surveys, so really gauging employee satisfaction and engagement can help us monitor some things and help us create some action plans in the future. Number of participants in a wellness program, which we'll be launching next year, and then increasing our diversity to reflect our ever-changing student population. So those are draft goals that we are articulating, and by the end of the 60 days, we will have really firm goals, which we will begin articulating strategies to help us reach those goals. So I'm just going to put a few of these up here right now. So at the end of 90 days, we hope to have the strategies designated, and then it's going to take us like 2 to 4 years to fully implement all the strategies and reach our goals. So for some examples under performance excellence, one strategy would be to create a standards operating procedure manual where we get all those wonderful processes that we have, put them in a manual, get them very streamlined, eliminate the waste. Another strategy could be implement or revise systems for efficiency for electronics. So our new financial system, we're looking at new HR systems that could help us not only keep our record keeping more efficient, but other processes as well. Strategic staffing, build those relationships with higher ed sources. I just met with Buena Vista last week and said, can I get in front of your students to come be sub-paras and to be sub-teachers, and we want to recruit. So just keep building those types of things. And then establishing a succession and planning model and pipeline for leaders. Managing and development, so training all of our supervisors and evaluators on the evaluation. So not only our principals, but our custodial supervisors, our nutrition supervisors, et cetera. And then creating a professional learning scope and sequence for our classified staff, so paraeducators, administrative assistants, and then our substitute teachers as well. And then another possible, some few strategies under culture and rewards would be to monitor that and respond our culture through those surveys, and then design systems and processes that promote diversity and inclusion. So it's quite a bit. So at the end of 90 days, we want to have the strategies articulated, and then the work through the summer will be what are the actual action steps and the people responsible for driving those strategies forward to meet our goals. So just a quick review there, our mission, select, support, develop. And we start every team meeting. How did you embody that mission this week? We also start every team meeting in our department. How did you embody those values this week? And we celebrate that. So as I'm coming in close here, I was on Twitter the other night, and I was looking at some things, and I saw Richard Branson, very famous CEO, and I loved his quote because it really aligned with our philosophy. And he talked about, you train people well enough so they can leave your organization, but you treat them well enough so they don't want to. Can't say it any better than that. So that's the time for now. Any questions for me?
Questions?
Be ambitious. Wish you well.
Appreciate that, Mr. Grove.
If I may?
Sure.
I am just really proud of the work that Mr. Bilborn's brought, because when I got here, it was a department that I had that needed to be nurtured. It needed to have a focus. It needed to have some true leadership with it. And I really feel like we're on the right track now to really bring together a good HR. And I just say Godspeed, and I support you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good report.
That concludes our presentations. Now we move forward with our resolutions section. First up is the approval of the $4 million revenue bond issuance. Do we have a motion?
I move that the board directs the sale of $4,024,000 in school infrastructure sales, service, and use tax revenue bonds, Series 2019.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, before us now, we have the motion that has to approve a $4 million revenue bond issuance. Mr. Wilson, would you please call the roll?
Mr. LaFurla,
Yes.
Dr. Ogres.
Yes.
Mr. McGlade,
Yes.
Mr. Grove,
Yes.
Mr. Kazire.
Yes, and the motion has been approved for the bond issuance. Next up is the plan specifications and form a contract for the Abraham Lincoln High School parking lot renovations.
Move to approve the plan specifications and form of contract for bid number 19004 and 19005, Abraham Lincoln High School visitor parking lot.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move forward with the vote on the plan specifications and form a contract for the Abraham Lincoln High School parking lot. Mr. Wilson, would you please call the roll?
Dr. Ogres. Mr. Grove,
Yes.
Mr. McGlade,
Yes.
Mr. LaFurla,
Yes.
and Mr. Kazire.
Yes, and the motion has been approved. Next is the plan specifications for the Hoover parking lot renovation. Is there a motion?
Yes, I would move to approve the plan specifications and form of contract for bid number 19-003 Hoover West parking lot.
Yes. We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move forward with the approval of plan specification for the form of contract for the Hoover Elementary parking lot renovation. Mr. Wilson, please call the roll.
Mr. McGlade,
Yes.
Mr. LaFurla,
Yes.
Mr. Grove,
Yes.
Dr. Ogres.
Yes.
Mr. Kazire.
Yes, and the motion is carried. Up now is early retirement incentive. Is there a motion?
I would move to approve an early retirement incentive as presented for a maximum of 25 administrators and/or certified staff members.
Thank you for the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
First 25 get it. So time is of the essence.
I think here it says who have 25 years or more of service in the district.
Yes.
With no further discussion, we will move forward with the vote on the early retirement incentive. Mr. Wilson, would you please call the roll?
Mr. McGlade,
Yes.
Mr. LaFurla,
Yes.
Mr. Grove,
Yes.
Dr. Ogres, Mr. Kazire.
Yes, and the motion is carried. With that, we have completed our business, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.